Alrighty, we are here with Jamie Sonneville, founder and CEO of Agri-Trak, and already one of my all-time favorite guests because our now, at the time of this recording, 8.5-month-old daughter is named Jamie. And Jamie Sonneville, I'm happy to share that we named her after you. So thank you so much for joining today.
I love that. I'm grateful to have that much of an impact in the world already.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you've had a huge impact on her life already. It's unbelievable. But
And she does spell it the right way.
I was just you took the Jamie words out of my mouth. Exactly. There's a whole debate about the spelling of it. We get our fault. She's gonna get that question throughout her life, probably how you have. But we're all on the same page about spelling it this way, so it's the correct way.
Yeah,
And
it's the only way.
And that's the end of this interview. So thanks, Jamie. No, but before we get to Agri-Trak and all the cool things you're doing there in the, we'll call it greater Rochester area, but Farmville area. Speaking of farms, I heard that you are a 5th-generation apple farmer, which I would just go out on a limb, pun intended, and say that that's a lot more generations of apple farming than the average person. Can you paint a picture of like what that childhood, what that upbringing was like in that environment?
Yeah, for sure. So I would just clarify 5th-generation farmer. My dad was an apple farmer, but my
Sorry, that
ancestors.
you know what, we're gonna get sued by, and all the Steve Jobs stands are gonna come after us, man.
Yeah, well, I just don't want to, I don't want to set anybody incorrectly portray who I am here, but a 5th-generation farmer. And so what that really means, and also just for the record, my husband is also a 5th-generation. So there's lots of like farm talk that has surrounded our lives. And what's really interesting, I think, is people think about farming as a profession, but for people who aren't living it day to day, it's really a lifestyle. And so I grew up in that lifestyle where you had to pick and choose what you went to, literally based on like the season or what was going to be ripe or the weather, or even like, is it still daylight out because we're still going to work? We're going to get something done until, we can't, and then we can go to whatever that function is. And so that 5th-gen piece to me is so important because that means like I know what my family went through and what their families went through, and all the way back to get to where we are today. And so it's also been really fun because I've been able to watch the progression of how agriculture has changed from my vantage point, looking at previous generations today, and then trying to guess where it might go tomorrow.
Yeah, what an incredible history you have there. What's another misconception that people have about like farming and farming families?
Oh man. I mean, I don't think we have enough time today to go through them all. I don't know if I would say a misconception, but I will say what I've noticed in my lifetime is farming farmers feed the world, right? Like we can't survive without farmers who are growing the crops that we consume every day. But when I was a kid, there was this sort of maybe just a really kind of quiet undertone that farmers were just farmers, right? Like a lot of them maybe weren't highly educated. Maybe they were, that, no huge generalizations there, but there was this sort of perception that farmers were blue collar, just sort of like they existed, we needed them, and that's what it was. And what I've seen in the last couple of decades is a real shift from that sort of like farmers are just farmers, or they farm because they couldn't do something else, which is absolutely not true, to this like noble profession that people really seem to be enamored with. They like to know where their food came from. They like to know who's growing their food. They like to know that there's sustainable practices being used. They also really have this sort of like farmers are salt of the earth people, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And I think that a lot of the general public resonates with that sort of idea that farmers, like, we can't live without them. It's a noble profession. They're good people. And it's been really kind of fun to see that dynamic shift in the way people think about growers.
So let's get to Agri-Trak. And I think I'm always amazed. Like at this point, I've interviewed so many entrepreneurs on this show, and it's like every episode, I'm just continually blown away by. Like it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Like there's so much. Like every industry is ripe for innovation and really just like time saving, efficient, organization skills helping solutions. And farming and agriculture is like a really, really, really fun one because to your point, like it's been around for so long, but like now with technology, there's so much you can do.
Yeah.
So, before first of all, for anybody who's not too familiar with it, what's like your one line, the Uber of farming version for Agri-Trak?
I mean, we really help farms digitize their operations and provide data and analytics to help them make smarter decisions. That's my
That's
one liner.
Yeah, that's perfect. Now we're gonna do 2-liner, 3-liner. No, I'm just kidding. No, if you check out your site and some of the images, pictures you have about the tools, it's really awesome, and I could just imagine on the like consumer or receiving end of that, farming end of that, like just how much lighter and easier it makes your life. So, can you take us through like when you first realized there's potential for this solution that you created?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we mentioned, right, my husband and I are both fifth gen farmers. We bought.
Only second gen apple farmers, though. I have to.
Thank you for the clarification.
I'm
We
here
bought
for
my
you.
we bought my parents' farm about 15 years ago, and when we bought the farm, right, like we knew my parents had been making money. We didn't necessarily know exactly like how much money, but like they raised a family and it was working. So we knew that we were buying something that was profitable, but we didn't really know how much. And that's because my mom and dad, they farmed like many of our Agri-Trak customers farm today. They use a lot of like pen and paper, manual recording, and they looked at their operation as a whole. And so when you look at your operation as a whole, if you think about like a factory, right, and you have different products, if you're not dialing into which of those SKUs are making money and which ones are not, and you're just looking at your entire operation, you're leaving a lot of hidden data on the table, right? And a lot of money possibly on the table. And so we knew that we wanted a better way to track what was happening on the farm. And at the same time, as our farm was starting to grow, there was a real labor shortage here in the Northeast with farm laborers. And so the United States government has a program called the H2A program that allows farms to have access to seasonal laborers from other countries. Um, that program is, we could have a whole segment on the program itself. There's pros and cons to it. But one of the pieces of it, right, is you have to have labor to harvest your crops. So grateful for the program, but it requires the recording of a lot of data points to help stay in compliance and to provide reports back to the government about what these individuals did on your farm and making sure that you're paying them appropriately, you're adhering to the contracts. It's a very contractual program, and you really need to stay within the confines of that. And so we knew as we were growing our operation and moving into the H2A program, we needed a better way to track things. And there were two options. I could go back to the farm and manually track a lot of the stuff and make sure, I's were dotted, T's were crossed, so we were doing everything we needed to do. Or I could build something that helped us do that. I've always been in the IT world as a director of technology for school districts. I own an IT consulting business. And I figured, well, I don't really want to get divorced. So going back to work with my husband every day was probably not like the best idea. Love him dearly, but I don't know if we could work side by side every day together. And so I decided, like, let's just try this. Let me build something. And so at its very like rudimentary sort of version, even pre-MVP version, we were using it to just track employees in and out of the orchard. And we knew when they got to work, when they went to lunch, when they came back from lunch, when they left, and very simple tracking around what they were doing. And we realized that that could drive payroll because they get paid both hourly and by the piece rate. So now we could track better data to better pay them is, honestly and the most accurately as possible. And we also realized, well, by virtue of them using our tools to make sure they get paid fairly, we're gathering the most accurate data we've ever had around the exact like minutes people are doing tasks. So now we're not looking at an employee just working 8 hours a day, because typically that's what happens, right? You say, well, they worked 7 to 5. That's because it's easier to enter into Excel if you're using Excel or QuickBooks or whatnot. what we found is our employees really were getting to work at like 7:03 or 7:04, and they might leave a couple minutes early. Some days they might leave 10 minutes late, but that rounding was leaving a lot of money on the table when they weren't working, and it was leaving a lot of money on the table for them when they were working. And so we were much more accurately recording what was happening. And we were also, because we were recording to the minute, we knew exactly how long it was taking to complete specific jobs on the farm. Using all of that data, right, we realized that we could no longer look at the operation as a whole. We had to break it down into segments. And so we looked at different locations, different blocks within those locations, and then different varieties within those blocks. And so we could compare, America's like favorite apple, a Honeycrisp apple. We could compare Honeycrisp from one location to another to understand, like, which ones were yielding like better fruit, more fruit, was more work going into doing that. And those kind of analytics are sort of what came out of us trying to build a system to just more accurately record data. And then we had neighbors in the surrounding area say, hey, like, we would love to try that. Can we buy it? And I said, I'm kind of a hustler of sorts. Of course you can buy it. And then I went right back to my computer, like, how do I sell software subscription? I was not, I didn't set out to build a tool to sell. I didn't set out to start a startup company. I was just building a tool to help us. And it was after about 5 different farms subscribed to Agri-Trak. I didn't even really know how it was selling a subscription, that I realized there's something here. It's time to like maybe get some mentorship, start to learn, start to read as many books as possible, and figure out what I was doing. So
I think that that's an amazing way to start a business that can last. Is, to your point, just like building a tool that is out there to solve a problem that you're experiencing yourself. I think so often, there's like ways to start a business when you're like, oh, I just want to be an entrepreneur, if you can pronounce it right, or I want to be my own boss, things like that. But then there's the other side of like, I want to fix this, and like whether that's for me or for other people, I think that's an amazing foundation to build upon. My heart like warmed when you said Honeycrisp, because I can like taste the Honeycrisp when you said that, and I'm somebody who. I think for a long time, like my favorite has always been Pink Lady. I'm a big Pink Lady fan.
Yeah.
And I more recently tried Honeycrisp, and it's like has such a nice like snap to it.
Well, I have a treat for you. There is a brand new apple that is a cross between a Honeycrisp and a Pink Lady.
Ooh.
So
whoa.
Yeah. All right. It's called a Wild Twist. I know this is not an apple segment, but I was.
Be careful what you wish for. There might be an apple segment coming.
I can do that. I'd be happy to do that. We've got some really cool tech stuff happening on our farm as well. But Wild Twist, you got to go find it. They're, Costco, I think Kroger. I'm trying to think of where else they are right now, but you can find them. Costco is probably the biggest retailer right now of Wild Twist, and it's a fantastic apple.
Oh my god! And it's got wild in the name, so it's perfect for this podcast. So
absolutely,
thank you for that.
You should brand them and send them to your guests.
Wild Business Growth Apples.
Yeah.
Twist.
Yeah. I did that last year. I put Agri-Trak stickers on the apples when they were green, and then they ripened, and then pulled the stickers off, and then my Agri-Trak logo was green, like on the apples.
Oh, that's brilliant! I love it. I love like the little like marketing branding tactics like that.
Yeah.
So you said something else earlier. You said pre-MVP, which is so many entrepreneurs talk about MVP. I always think of how clever it was from the creators of the show Silicon Valley that the first episode, the pilot episode, was called MVP. So it was pretty clever. But I've never heard the term pre-MVP before, which is like a really, really important stage. So like what was going through your mind in terms of like making this, like not even knowing what it looks like yet, but like knowing that it needs, this sort of product benefit to actually be helpful for people?
I think I thought about, right, like I'm solving a problem on our farm. And to me, the MVP stage came once we had other farms on the platform and we were trying to build to meet their needs as well. It was no longer just like a single function tool. And that meant we had to think about farms that grew different products that were set up differently. And that's where that's when we got to MVP stage in my mind, is like, okay, we're building this for more than one person. And it has to function in a wide variety of ways. And so I know that pre-MVP is probably something unique that like I maybe just made up, but I think it's
And now we're
important.
talking about it. It's amazing how that happens.
It is. Well, I mean, I guess I like to coin that, everybody. Like pre-MVP, it's my
Pre-MVP TM.
yeah, a little TM on there would be great. I think that when I didn't even know I was starting a startup, right? Like that to me is at pre-MVP stage. And we talk about Agri-Trak when some of our sales team talks to farms about, implementing Agri-Trak. They talk about how Agri-Trak was built from the inside out. And I think that to your point, a lot of entrepreneurs will go out and try and create a product to solve a problem they're not even sure exists. Like they're trying to find that problem because they want to be an entrepreneur. They want to build something. I've always been an entrepreneur. Things tend to just happen. And I think a lot of it is because I don't go out seeking a problem to solve. I have a problem that I have to solve. And that's sort of, where we're at.
Well, there you go. You have a future collaboration with the Inside Out movie franchise too.
There we go.
For your business.
I love it.
So on the tech side, and clearly with your IT consulting business, like you're very knowledgeable about the tech side of things as well. What was a breakthrough you had on the tech side that really moved your software forward?
It's something we call a harvest unit. So a lot of farms operate on the piece rate. They pay based on the piece. In the apple industry, you pay based on the bin of apples harvested. But I know that there's different size bins. There's 18 bushel bins, 19 and a half bushel bins, 20, 22, 12. And if you really want to pay as fairly and as accurately as possible, you really should be paying based on the bin size. Well, when you think about the cherry industry, they often pay by the pound or by the lug. You think about the strawberry industry, they pay by the quart or the flat. There's all these different variables that could become incredibly difficult, especially if you're using the H-2A program and the government is dictating year over year price increases. And if you think about if you're a farm that grows multiple commodities, having hundreds of container types, going in and changing the price of those container types at the beginning of every season could actually be a nightmare. There's really no great way to manage that. But what we found was if we break things down into what we call the harvest unit, you can then build an unlimited number of container types based on X number of harvest units, and you only have to change the price of the harvest unit, and all of your container types can reflect that change automatically. And so it's sort of like the least common denominator is the way that we think of it. We break down to like what's the absolute smallest thing that we can track that you can then multiply a multiple of to get to that container size to pay by the piece. That has proven to be, we were only selling to apple farms when we started. But I thought, well, my farm grows peaches and strawberries and other things as well. What if we sell to a flower farm or an herb farm? How would they track this? And that harvest unit is really, that has set us up for success because now we can sell to any vertical and we can help track whatever it is they want to track.
What have you learned about selling software? Like, are you technically a SaaS company if it comes down to it? Yeah, okay. So software as a service with the two big S's and the two small A's if we want to get really specific. But what have you learned about selling software through this journey?
Selling software to farmers is very different than selling a traditional SaaS product to a business owner or operator. Selling SaaS, right? Like when you first think of the concept, it can be a little bit confusing because people are like, software as a service. I don't understand that. But most people today are familiar with just subscriptions, right? Almost everything has moved to a subscription-based model. Why? Well, because your margins are highest, right? You are able to increase your revenue and grow year over year much more quickly in that model. But when you're selling to farmers and you're selling a tool like mine that is literally changing the way that they operate, you're also selling some change management that I didn't anticipate having to sell. And so I think the SaaS business is really interesting. The model is great. But when you're looking at selling to the consumer, the farmer, they have a much more slow approach, very antiquated in their practices. I mean, 80% of farms are still using pen and paper to track this kind of data. And so it's, we're not competing with competitors necessarily. When we're going to sales calls, we're competing with pen and paper. And so it's a very unique sale, very different than traditional SaaS, I think.
Yeah, that's what it's all the veteran farmers who are keeping Dunder Mifflin Paper Company in business still.
Hey, one of my like least favorite sayings is like, well, that's how we've always done it.
Mm.
Because that's what we hear all the time is, well, that's how my dad did it. Because most of these operations are multi-generational. And I think it's really easy to fall into the like, well, we need to trim now because that's how my dad did it. Or we need to plant trees 16 feet apart because that's how my dad did it. And I always say when I get to a farm and we're talking about these things, if they say, well, that's how we always did it, if you're not moving forward, you're actually falling behind. And, there's a crisis right now in the ag industry in this country. Farms are closing up at an alarming rate because the price of inputs have outpaced the price of product. And so the only way to account for that is to become more efficient and to grow at scale. If you don't have the tools to give you the data to understand like what you should grow and why, well, that's really difficult. And if you're not progressing in your operation and giving yourself time back to do something different, to be more impactful elsewhere, you're literally falling behind. So when I go into a farm that's like a multi-generational farm that's doing things in a very manual way, or at least maybe they're using some tools, but it's still very antiquated, that's my favorite kind of a sale, because it's like, I really think I can change the trajectory of your farm, but you're going to have to trust me. And I think that that's my insider knowledge of like growing up on a farm, owning a farm, operating a farm. I think I'm a little more credible, right, than like maybe one of my competitors in the space who isn't from a farm.
Yeah, that I always go back to change is hard. Like it's just as humans, like we naturally like don't want to change. I'm notoriously stubborn. It's probably my wife's favorite quality about myself, but it takes so much of like effort and I guess expanding your mind to do something new, especially when it's something that you're doing every day. Do you have like a quick example of a customer or a farm that you've been working with who, to your point, was very much like, this is how we've always done it, and now they're like, wow, this is a game changer for us?
Yeah, I don't want to call any of my customers out.
Yeah, it can be anonymous.
Yeah, but we've definitely had. I can think of one in particular that is a sort of father-son duo, and there was the. I think there was a little bit of a fear that as the farm transitioned from, let's say, Gen 1 to Gen 2, that a lot of knowledge was going to walk out the door. And that was a little fear-based purchase, I think, of Agri-Trak. Like, can you just help me collect data? But what they realized was, holy cow, like we were really inefficient before, really inefficient. And we wanted to capture the information that Gen 1 had, but all of a sudden Gen 2 is now like, this is so much different. I'm no longer spending my entire Sunday afternoon doing payroll, right? I'm doing it in minutes on Monday morning before it's due. And those are the kind of things that are really, really exciting to see. Same with my own farm. I'll use that for an example as well. We were able to really analyze the different crops we were growing and what was profitable and what wasn't. And we found out that our apple crops were carrying our pears, meaning we were barely breaking even. Some years we were losing like $1,000 a year just growing pears. That's a lot of work to not make any money, and really sad to lose a little bit of money. We would never have known that though if we hadn't started to track the data we're tracking. And as soon as we ran reports, we had the data, we looked at the numbers, we realized we're losing money. We ripped it out. And that was one of those like, my dad had said, I've always made money in pears. And so we just went with the pears have always made our farm money, but they weren't. And so it's a great example of, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean we have to continue to do it that way. And there are better ways to do it. And, I know it's my own farm, but that was pretty impactful for us because it really changed the way we thought about our operation.
Well, my wife Dana has a pear allergy, so she's a huge fan of that story, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. Well, they're gone. We've ripped them all out. We don't grow one pear. So.
I think it was yeah, it was a conspiracy theory. I think it was like Dana behind the scenes was just like, no, you got to look at this data. Uh,
Interesting. I've never heard of a pear allergy.
so you asked for it. We have to do it. The Apple segment. This is a choose your own adventure podcast. You've spoken into existence. I was curious about a lot of Apple questions, and I'm like, now we have to do this. So this
Okay.
switch up. I'm just very curious about apples and apple farming. So this is kind of a, you said pre MVP earlier. This is a pre rapid fire Q&A. All
Okay.
Apple.
I'm on it.
All right. What if you were like on your deathbed and can only have one apple as like your last meal? Which I'm sure the meal would be more than one apple, but maybe it wouldn't be. What variety of apple would it be?
Oh man, I have to pick one.
Uh huh. Yeah. You're on your deathbed.
It might be a wild twist.
I can't wait to try these. Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome. We're going
Yep.
straight to Costco.
Get there and get them.
All right. How about what is somebody who's like a total outsider? Like, what are some key things in terms of like the environment, the setting, I guess, that makes it like a really good growing season for apples?
Oh, well, so a couple of things. Um, Obviously, the weather patterns, right? So we need a lot of heat in the summer, and as we move into the fall, we want those really cold nights. That helps those apples color up, get nice and red, and that's when it's time to pick them. And so we're really weather dependent, and we're also location dependent. And what I mean by that is, if you look at in New York State, for example, the apple growing regions, they tend to follow like the lake shore, Lake Ontario, south. I'm literally looking at the lake right now. I'm like 1,000 yards from the lake where I'm sitting in my office, but our farm is a mile and a half south of the lake, and the lake is really instrumental in this area in helping to insulate the area. Meaning, when it's really really cold in the spring, if the lake is still a little bit warm, we're able to ward off maybe a freeze event that would wipe out or decimate a crop in this area. And so the lake is really instrumental. And the soil that's connected to the lake, we have a very sandy, loamy soil here, which is really important for apples. Um, Apples have been grown here for hundreds of years, and that's why it's just a great location to grow fruit. The weather is great, but I will say I've noticed in the last decade or so, our weather has changed a tad. I think across the world, right? People are noticing our weather patterns are shifting, and so far we've still been, just okay for apples, but it's been a little different, and I'm a little nervous as to like where we might go. Does that push us out of like the prime weather patterns for growing fruit here?
That's fascinating. You could have a full-time job as a meteorologist as well. All right. What is your favorite food recipe or drink recipe to make using apples?
Well, it would have to be like probably like an apple cider old fashioned,
Ooh,
right?
like
With a
a
little
like
like maple,
yeah.
brown sugar, cinnamon, like old fashioned. Um, Food wise, I think just like a straight up like one of my mom's apple pies. My mom makes awesome apple pies. I do not. I don't know why. I can cook. I can cook really well. I cook all sorts of creative foods. I'm a foodie. I don't bake very well, and I think maybe it's because I have to like follow a very specific like recipe for baking. It's not just like cook with your heart. It's like you need to put these proportions in, or things don't work right. And
Yeah, it's the entrepreneur gene. It's like
yeah,
it's hard to stay follow a specific plan.
yeah, I don't color within the lines very well.
Well, actually, I was going to ask about alcoholic drinks too. So we just had we went a couple weekends ago here in New Jersey. There's a cidery called Burnt Mills Cider, and it was like delicious. So like me personally, I'm a huge beer fan. Like I haven't had much cider, but some of this cider was like delicious. They had like a cranberry chai flavor. The Hunt
Yeah.
that was like that's the best cider I've ever had, hard cider I've ever had. Anyway, I don't know if you guys are involved with this or not, but like what makes the difference between making like cider from your apples versus making a hard cider?
So a hard cider is just a longer ferment, right? To get to like the hard it's alcohol content.
It needs to harden.
Yeah, right. And then like apple jack, people have heard of occasionally. Like you literally would take like a hard cider and you can freeze it and you take, what's left, which is the really concentrated part
Wait,
of it.
apple jack like whiskey?
Yeah.
Like
No, well, it's called apple jack, but it's not Jack whiskey. It's just called apple jack.
what kind
So,
of? Yeah, I've never heard that before. What is it?
well, it's hard cider, but it's hard. Like, so
Oh,
there's
okay,
different
got it.
levels of hard cider, right? Like the hard cider you're going to get at a cidery is going to be like a 6 to 9%, just like an
Exactly.
IPA might be, right? But if you continue to let that ferment, you're quickly in like the 100 proof range, which is also hard cider, but now you're looking at it as a spirit that you're maybe mixing with a cocktail. Um, and in our town, we have a couple of different cideries, and we have one distillery that you know originated from making spirits from apples, and so they've got all different kinds of like vodkas and whiskeys, all made with apple base, which is really interesting.
Oh my god, that's wow. You just gave a lot of examples. That could be a lot of fun there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we live in a really cool place, I think, because I was, mentioning to you a little bit earlier before we started recording that we live 30 minutes or so from Rochester. So within a half of an hour, we're in downtown Rochester. Great food scene, great beverage scene. But out here where we are, where most of the products are being grown to satisfy those sort of, requests in the city, all these little cideries and wineries are popping up in our town, and it's really cool because we know most of the owners because they're doing the same thing we're doing, but they're having to diversify, and that's what's really interesting about farms today. When I said if you're not progressing and changing, you're falling behind. A lot of these multi-gen farms, in order to support more than one family, as the younger generation comes in, they have to diversify. One of the ways to diversify is to find another product to create based on your raw product. And so, apples, what's next? Apple cider. Or the agritourism, right? People are creating farm stands that have apple picking and pumpkin patches and hay rides. And you have to come up with really unique ways to use the resources that you have. And whether that's your raw product or the property you're sitting on, or you just scale, right? And so that's what our farm's been doing. We've just been growing. We've tripled in size in the last 15 years. And I don't think we're slowing down because we have two children. No idea if they're going to come back to the farm. Zero pressure, right? Like zero pressure. If they don't want to, they shouldn't. Because as I mentioned earlier, this is a lifestyle. But we've had to figure out how to get to the point that if our children want to be a part of this operation, we can also support that. And like I said, you're either diversifying or you're scaling to get there.
Well, shout out Rachacha. I got to dive a little bit more into Rachacha in a second, but last one for this famous Apple segment, which has been in the
Yeah.
works for years here. What fruit is the most sensitive? Like it's a very small window where you have to get it right.
Ooh. Probably berries. I
Mm,
think berries are really, really susceptible to pests, pathogens, diseases. The smallest amount of uncontrolled water can just like, think about like raspberries in your refrigerator, or if you wash them and you put them away wet, they turn to mush. That happens on the bush. We used to grow strawberries and raspberries as a kid. Um, I think that those might be some of the hardest things to grow. I'm not sure. But I do have an interesting apple fact for you. Do you know that roses are a cousin to the apple?
really?
Yeah.
No, that's what a family tree.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've never drawn that. Like, I don't know what that looks like, but they're related. And it's interesting because if you think about some apples, like a red delicious, right? Terrible apple. I think it's a terrible apple. It's very popular because it looks pretty. It has
yeah.
like a floral sort of nose and scent to it, and that's really interesting to me because when you think about the connection to roses, there is that floral scent in a lot of apples.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. We got actual trees. We got family trees. Trees of farmers.
Yeah.
All right, let's before we get in too much trouble, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. This is not just about apples. This is
Okay.
about you know Microsoft and no, I'm just gonna resist. But all right, let's get wild. You mentioned Rochester.
Yeah,
Sorry, shout out my friend, former coworker Shannon, who always described it that way. So sorry if nobody says that. Um,
we do. We do.
Everybody talks about Wegmans. I have to ask about Wegmans. Why is it that Wegmans has like such a diehard, almost cult like brand ambassador following?
Um, well, Rochester's a small, so Wegmans was created here, right? Developed here. The Wegmans family is from here. Rochester is still a fairly small market, right? Like we're a metro area, but fairly small. And it's one of those types of neighborhoods or communities where like everybody knows everybody. So I think the fact that the Wegman family is from here, built a local grocery store, and people supported it because it was their neighbors goes back to a lot of like who we are in this type of a community. We're a very like supportive, nurturing community. But then Wegmans took it to a whole new level. And they built the type of a grocery store that you want to go hang out at, which is really unusual. A lot of people will walk into a grocery store, get the grocery shopping done, and take off. But Wegmans has built this environment of like their friendly neighborhood almost hangout. We've got cafes. Some of them have bars in them, like the eateries, and you can grab lunch, you can grab a breakfast sandwich. Like, they've kind of created this place where you're going to go there and they know you're going to buy something else while you're there. And so I think that that's why it started off with let's like support our neighbors, and now it's turned into like let's go see our neighbors at this place.
Yeah, that's a really
Maybe.
great analysis of it. I've always thought that grocery stores have like kind of just a nice, comforting vibe to it. In general, it's like mainly because I love food as well, and you're surrounded by food. But there's just something about it, like it's well lit if it's the store is done right, and
Yep.
it's kind of just it's not bad to like walk around through. Now, I've only been to Wegmans a couple times in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, randomly, and I I totally see what you were just saying. It takes that comfort and that sense of almost home to the next level of
Yep.
just like wow, like I want to move in here.
Yes. Well, and they've spent a ton of money on understanding consumer habits and consumer shopping habits. And if you think about like the displays that they build, the displays are beautiful. It's a type of welcoming environment that you want to go to, and you are more apt to, I think, spend money in that kind of environment. Another thing they've done really well is they've created a private label, right? Their Wegmans label, and they look at what's really great sellers in the store, and they privatize that. They make it their own product that can compete price wise with those big names, and I think that that's been really, really successful for them as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the private labels. Here just locally, it's ShopRite because it's down the street. They're both a
Okay.
basket brand, but same sort of thing. Like save a buck on everything. It builds up over time.
For sure.
All right. Let's talk time management. So you are seemingly incredibly busy. You have your you have Agri-Trak, you have your IT consulting business, you have the farm, you have two kids, family. Like there's a lot. I know you've done a lot of stuff in school and school board over the years.
Yep.
What's your time management tip that you can share of like how you get it all done and find a few hours of sleep?
Um, I don't know. I don't know.
Good. We'll put it on a quote card. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So first of all, like, first and foremost, I have one of the most incredibly supportive families. I could not do what I do without my husband, who's a huge cheerleader of mine, but also willing to pick up a ton of slack at home when I am working, traveling, meetings at night, etc. Could not do it without him. Um, my parents live right around the corner from us, and when our kids were younger, they would very, very often say, we'll take the kids so you can go do what you have to do. Or even if they didn't take the kids, my mom's always cooking and bringing food over if I'm not home for a week, I'm traveling. And so without my family, I could not do it. The other thing that's really interesting is, like, I rely on technology to do a lot of things for me. Um, in searching. So like I'm very organized in like my home life, like my kitchen is very organized. If there's not a place for something, then it doesn't belong in there. And I built a new kitchen around that sort of mentality. But I don't treat like my email. I don't have folders. I have my archive folder. Everything goes in there, but I rely on search to find it for me. And I've taught
Oh,
myself
I'm a
like,
huge search fan.
yeah,
I did like a computer update the other week, and for just like probably 20 minutes, the search function wasn't working, and I'm like, what do I do? I can't use email. Like,
can't function, right? I would be the same way. And so I rely on some tech tools like that. AI has drastically changed the speed at which I can pump things out and move on to the next. I'm very good at compartmentalizing. So, when you're on different committees and boards, and, I own vacation rentals, we have long-term rentals. We have a lot going on in our lives. And if I didn't compartmentalize like that, it would all be overlapping and it'd be very difficult to kind of retrieve things. And so search is my friend. I, if I don't have to commit it to memory, I don't. And I also don't like paper. And people make fun of me. They say, well, if you're a techie, you don't like paper. Well, the reason I don't like paper is I've got multiple offices, I've got multiple vehicles. And if you hand me a piece of paper in 3 days' time, I couldn't tell you where it's going to land, right? It could be in a pocket. It could be in one of my 10 backpacks, depending on what my purpose is. Like, if you give me paper, it's going to disappear. But if I'm using an AI tool to help record our conversation, I can retrieve it. If you send it to me in an email, I can retrieve it. So, and I hate voicemail. Don't leave me a voicemail because I'm not going to listen to it. I don't, it's like waste of time. So text me.
yeah, that's something that's been kind of fascinating, especially over the past like 10, 15 years of like, I think voicemail used to be really helpful, and it's helpful, but like now it's like I feel like especially like each new generation is like less and less using voicemail. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
it feels
yeah.
like
And I'll have people say, "Oh, your voicemail's full." Okay, I mean, it's better that way because then I don't have to text it.
lock it, throw it away, bury it.
Yeah, and really, if you think about the act of like leaving somebody a voicemail, and then I have to go listen to it, and then I'm going to call them back or text them anyways, like just shoot me a text or an email.
Well, that's the
Um,
best one. That's that when you know who's calling, and then there's a message, and then they say, "Call me back," and like
yeah,
that was the
that was the
we're
voicemail.
just adding time here.
Exactly. And so, like my cell phone provider will do the transcription of voicemails now. Thank God for that, because then I don't have to listen. I can just glance at it. And the other thing is, right, like I know that you're probably like me. We're on Zoom all the time. Like I work remotely. My whole team is remote. I'm in Teams and Zoom all the time. If you call me, I literally would have to stop what I'm doing to like. But I can text while I'm on a Zoom. I can still communicate while I'm on a Zoom, but just like a PSA, stop calling people. Like that's
Yeah, and now we can reveal. We're recording this on Squadcast, but I've been texting you this whole time, telling you verbatim how to answer each question. So
yeah,
that's been working great too.
it's
So
been working fantastic.
thanks. That's what I just texted you. All right, last one. This is probably the most important question I've ever asked. How often in your life have you used the phrase "How about dem apples"?
Um, my previous business partner's license plate was Dem Apples, which I think is hilarious. Um, I have used that phrase a couple times in my life, but
I was
uh,
gonna say it's probably that dad joke gets old quick.
no, I think it's hilarious. Yeah, I could go down a path with that kind of thing, but I will not. I'll refrain from that.
All right, well, the dem apples license plate.
Yep.
Jamie, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing the Agri-Trak story and all of your lessons and even Apple tips. And I want to try Wild Twist right after this. So thank you
Good.
so much. Where's the best place for people to learn more about your business and then connect with you online?
Yeah, so agritrak.com. We have a cool website that has a lot of information. We have sort of a learn section that can tell you a little bit more about what we're doing and who our customers are. And then LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me if you want to know more about me personally and the types of things I'm up to.
Perfect. And then last thing, final thoughts. It could be a few words to live by, whatever you want. You could just say, "How about dem apples?"
How
Since you've
about them
said
apples?
it, make it a third time. But no, whatever you want, send us home here.
Yeah, no, I think that one of the things we didn't touch on is what I think is important to any new entrepreneur in when they want to start a business or if looking to grow a business. And I think that is two things. One is mentorship, and the second is surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you. I guess this kind of goes hand in hand, but I don't think that I would be where I'm at today if I didn't participate in some accelerators and incubators and getting to know people who are incredibly intelligent that can help sort of lift you up through this process. So I would suggest any entrepreneur goes out and finds somebody who is definitely smarter than them to help them move through this process.
Bring on the bongos.